Good afternoon. This is just checking the sound for part 2 of the regular council meeting.
Yeah, letter of agreement.
Letter of agreement?
Sorry, it was just what was titled in Committee of the Whole. It was the Wetaskiwin District Museum Society. It was the letter of agreement with them.
Good afternoon, Council. Yeah, my computer has died, apparently. I left it on, so the battery's dead. We have, Mayor would like to bring forward a discussion about the specifics around when we do enforcement compared to certain levels, or compare it to surrounding properties in general. So that's the discussion. I'll turn it over to Chair to provide more information.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is ongoing for sure, but council often asks what the trigger is for nuisance properties to either get attention by a contractor or when a letter is sent to the property owner to make sure that we have a cleaner community. And so one of the ideas for that was instead of having a 20 centimeter trigger on grass and weeds, that it matched the surrounding properties. So I would just like to see some changes so that our administration can be a little bit more proactive in terms of our community standards and its bylaw. So I move that City Council directs administration to explain enforcement processes for every section of the community standards bylaw and bring it back to council for discussion before the end of Q3 2024. Open it up to discussion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think we need to look at, would that be looking at our process as well, the timelines with it? Like our 2 weeks notice and then our 30-day notice and those kinds of things?
That would be part of it.
That would be part of it,
Yep.
Because we know that there are habitual properties that are messy year after year after year. So rather than waiting until the end of June, if we could get them going at the 1st of April or something, or May, and then get them to continue, or else if they don't want to do that, then the city would step in and do it and then just add it to their taxes. So
Yeah, that can be that conversation when we bring back that bylaw.
thank you very much.
Yep. No,
I
not
just,
if I outweighted you, you'd get there.
I was waiting for Councillor Nielsen, but I think aesthetics almost comes into this too, and this goes into somewhat related to the pruning that was shared by this morning, but if you look at City Hall, this is supposed to be our kind of our jewel or our gem, and so the hedges haven't been clipped for a while. There's branches hanging on the ground and things. To me, that is still part of our community standards to make it look good. And yes, we don't have staff to do all the trees, but we should be looking at some of our properties. We had people here for provincial ball tournament. We had the cars here. We've had all these different things happening in our community, and people are coming right past City Hall all the time.
Yeah, I think we need to absolutely lead by example. There's a number of city properties that I think could use some attention.
Okay,
But again, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I stimulated Councillor Nielsen's speech.
He's ready for the question and is already ready to vote.
A rhetorical question that needs no answer. Aren't we getting into the weeds when we start talking about process? I step back.
How do you tell it's been a long day? Anything further? Ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. 15-2, letter of agreement with Wetaskiwin District Museum. Councillor Blatz. Councillor Aberly.
I will excuse myself for pecuniary interests as the executive director of the Heritage Museum.
Thank you.
I'm going to take my mouse and not my water. It's been that kind of day.
Do you want me to go?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just from Committee of the Whole, we were talking about how there seems to be kind of a disconnect between what the actual agreement is with the Wetaskiwin District Museum Society is versus what the thought process is as far as in-kind services go and city employee time. And so I wanted to make a motion to, I wrote it down, hold on. I move that City Council directs administration to reach out to the Wetaskiwin District Museum Society to further clarify the agreement.
Did you give that to?
I emailed.
Nice. Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish with this. Like, because either there was misinterpretation of what the city should do or what it has done, and what the expectations are. So is that what you're trying to?
Yep.
Because if they truly have used over 210 hours, it's obviously volunteer hours, or, sorry, in-kind hours, sorry, not volunteer hours, in-kind hours. And if in the agreement it was supposed to be board hours, or board is committee meetings, then none of those hours in lieu of, right? So I'm really struggling with, you can't have both. Like in other words, either we are going to, the city will be there for committee meetings and that's it because we didn't allocate any in-kind service, or we gave you the 210 hours of in-kind service. And I'm not sure either way,
Yeah, so
what are you
that's,
trying to accomplish?
but that's what I'm trying to accomplish is the fact that it seems like there's confusion about what is actually being asked of the city versus what the interpretation was of the museum. And so it's just clarifying what the agreement is so that then everybody's back on a
So
equal plane.
myself, I interpreted that it was 210 in-kind hours of setting up this, that, and the other thing, or whatever it may be. And if they didn't think that that was the case, that they thought it was board work, then why were they coming to us for communication and all these other things? Or help with the parade? Because either you thought it was going to be board work, or you thought it was going to be in-kind service. Well, you asked for the in-kind service stuff, so that must have been what your intention was.
Except for in Schedule A, it outlines as just being committee hours.
But then why was the museum asking for in-kind service when that wasn't part of what they believed to be not part of the agreement?
Sounds like a good question for administration to talk to them about when they clarify the agreement.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we're going through this, we're talking about hours, but at the very last thing, it's the very last sentence, it says the 210 staff hours per calendar year outlined in the letter of agreement will be exceeded. What if what we expect them to do has not been met? So it's listed that the Canada Day, Taste of Wetaskiwin, Truth and Reconciliation Day are part of what they will be organizing. But what if they don't do those things? Instead of exceeding, they're not meeting their requirements. I think that needs to be clarified as well if we're going to clarify all these things. We're giving them money to do things, and if the things aren't being done, then there should be some repercussions or something. Thank you.
But I think in the contract, we have 1 year out. If they're not fulfilling the contract, we certainly could then terminate the contract.
Yeah. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. I would like to make an amendment to that motion to include at the end of that statement and report back to council at the next council meeting what the clarification actually is, so that we are clear.
August 19th?
For me?
Is it the
26th, I think, yeah. Is that doable, or do you need into September?
The August 26th is the next meeting? That's doable.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add to that,
Yep.
please?
To the amendment?
Yes, because I think council feels strongly that the 3 activities that they've contracted out are important for the community. And I think as a group, we want to see those activities continue in the community. But the people we've contracted out to need to understand what the rules of engagement are and what each party is bringing to the dance. And I think it's been interpreted quite differently by both sides of the agreement. And I think it's imperative that if we want to see these other activities operate in our community, that we clearly understand what the ground rules are moving forward in anticipation that they will still continue to happen.
To the amendment. Okay. Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Go ahead, Councilor Bronco.
Mic is off, thank you. To my colleagues in administration, wouldn't it be the simplest thing to do when we negotiate a new contract just to say, you're going to get $10,000, use it as many hours you want. When that limit is exceeded, because there is a cost to the volunteer hours and the 210 hours, we must know what that cost is to us and just say, for example, let's say it's $15,000 you get $15,000. When you exceed that, tough bananas.
And when or if we have a new agreement with,
Yeah, when we set up that way, we're not asking how much for volunteer and how much for board meetings.
Councilor Billingsley.
Thank you. So, for clarification, through the chair to whoever. So at this point, because the hours have been used up, there will be no further staff time in lieu given until this report comes back. Is that correct?
Through the chair to council, that's one of the, when we brought this report forward in committee of the whole, that was one of the things we were looking forward, was from more direction from council on if that's, you wanted us to have a dead stop now, or if you wanted us to proceed and exceed those hours, not knowing what the definition is yet.
Well, it's my understanding is that the contract, the museum, believes, from what we've been told, that it is board work, not operational. So I would be okay with so said board work, but not anything other than that, because that's what they said that they interpret the contract to be.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you. So, thinking a little bit. So they use the 210 hours already for volunteer work. Let's say that, now board. But yet we still have the Taste of Wetaskiwin to come. So if we don't use that, that means they did not exceed their contract commitment to us. Thank you.
Okay, to Councillor Blatz's motion, and then we can speak to the expectation from council regarding the time allotment. Anything further? We're ready for the question, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Do you, Kevin, sorry, do you need direction from council on our interpretation of that agreement?
Through the chair to the chair, that would be correct. If we think we're at that limit now, then as some of the discussion is taking place, then maybe we need to carry forward. If it's just including this until we get this further direction at the next council meeting, then we need for the interim in the next month some direction.
What do we normally do with, trying to think of another, if we had a street vendor event on Main Street and they ask for road closures, do we charge them for that?
There is a application process, and it depends on the size of the event, what application they fill out, and then there's certain costs associated to the vendor asking for that closure or that event, depending on the size of it. So yes, there is, but it depends on the size.
So if our interpretation is that the 210 hours were for board work, not the in-kind stuff, we missed a step working with them for road closure. That was kind of a question. Because the city is taking that in-kind work as part of the 210 hours. And if council's interpretation of the agreement is that that is not part of it, then there should have been another agreement to have those barricades and the road closures set up for that kind of in-kind work.
That would, through the chair to the chair, that would be our interpretation as well.
Okay, so then I'll ask council maybe in a straw poll. Interpretation of the agreement is that the 210 was for board work planning. If that's what your interpretation is, then does that make sense? Okay, so if that's your understanding of it as written in the agreement, then tell me. And if it's not, then we'll go full agreement that it includes the in-kind work done for the road closures. Yep.
But Schedule A, as I've read it, clearly states that the hours were to be dedicated to organizational planning and committee work. So if that's what's written into the agreement that's signed off between the city and the museum, how can we arbitrarily come back and say, well, that's not what my interpretation was?
Like, for me, it would be the intent. And for sure, the details matter. And I think that that's the misconception between our administration and the museum, in that the city figured that included all volunteer time, not just the planning part of it. So I guess if we go by the letter of the agreement, then that's the way it is, and then we need to have clarification moving forward on events like the Taste of Wetaskiwin. So if we need to set things up at the drill hall or whatever we're doing to help with that, if there are extra things outside of board work, we need to have those things looked after by the organizing group, not thinking that it's part of that in-kind work.
Or purchased by the organization
Correct.
group from the city?
Yes.
So they'd be billed for that time?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So then I'll take that as that's the understanding, that as Schedule A is written, it is for the board work planning, and anything else moving forward is needing to be applied for, paid for, agreement filled out for the other in-kind work, barricades, garbage cans, whatever it is that what else we had provided.
Mr. Mayor, when the library presents its budget, then it presents part of the budget as the in-kind services from the city. And that's a separate, and that's been approved. So I would like to see this happen as well.
Okay, Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. I agree with the board meeting to 210 hours for a simple reason. Staff is more expensive than our labor force out there. So if I was to, on their side, I would agree to the board member, which is a better deal, and pay for the 210 volunteer to set up barricades and everything. Do you follow me?
And kind of, but not necessarily. So are you saying then that going forward for Taste of Wetaskiwin, and they need to set up the drill hall, do they then have, is the dollars that costs comes out of the $10,000 that we gave to them?
Or they get, however we would do it for another event, they either apply for it or they get a bill from the city. So
For
yes.
that.
Yeah. And then it keeps the in-kind board work to those 210 hours.
And that would be fine going for the Taste of Wetaskiwin and, was it Truth and Reconciliation?
Yeah,
Yes.
or Sherwock Day, yeah.
But that doesn't, I'd like to know what happened then at Canada Day, because like I say, there was probably some staff there that was in kind, that those dollars haven't been accounted for.
Right, that we paid staff to be there to do.
Yes.
Yeah,
And all the planning that went into it.
yep. But I think that's, I would say that that's our misstep,
Yes.
right? And so just learning from that moving forward, and that's why I say if there's other in-kind stuff that they're looking for, barricades, setup, whatever, that it gets handled like every other event.
Fair enough.
Are you okay with that? Is that good direction? And we'll get a report back at the 26th meeting?
The direction is clear.
Thank you. What time did you say we were going to finish today?
6.
Yes, you did.
On the nose.
It is. Meeting adjourned at 1800. Thank you so much.
Because of the cost.
Thanks, staff.
Thank you, staff.